Okay, so yeah, welcome again to this session. So we're going to mainly talk about how to optimize process mining, how to optimize Salesforce Service Cloud with process mining. And today we're going to be two people presenting. So Rupert here on my side from Proximus, our customer, we did a project together and he was so kind to agree that we're going to do this webinar together. So let me introduce myself real quick before I hand it over to Rupert. So I'm Amina. I'm a manager and team lead at Apolix. I'm originally from Germany and I did my studies in the US and then right away started my first job in Germany in a company called Henkel, where we tried to position process mining as a strategic initiative and also worked a lot in the automation area. And this is what inspired me then to write my thesis also about process mining and RPA, which was a hot topic at that time. Then I started another job in the consulting area. I was at Deloitte at the Center of Process Bionics, also completely focused on process mining. I did a couple of implementations, especially in the financial area for order to cash processes, purchase to pay, but also left a broad range of other processes to explore. So I was also analyzing trade compliance, but HR, ATSM, a very broad range. So learned a lot in those years and then decided to do a move to a startup here in Rotterdam, where I'm now managing most of the international accounts and a small team at Apolix. But I will give an introduction of our company in a moment. I will hand it over to you, Rupert.
Sure. So my name is Rupert. I've just like Amina has specialized a lot in process mining. I have specialized a lot in everything regarding servicing in the telecoms environment. So I started. I'm not going to tell you when I started because you know how old I am. I'm very old. But I started when we started our company. So that'll give you an idea for those who know Proximus. In the contact center environment, and I've taken up various different jobs related to customer servicing, be it executing it yourself or being as a people manager or project manager, implementing or working on projects, coordinating projects to implement any improvements to increase the efficiency. A big change came then in let's say about 2016, 2017 when we decided to start using Salesforce, which took our servicing to a next level actually for our segment, which is mainly B2B. So yeah, what we started seeing there is that of course you have a next level CRM, which enables you to do so many cool things to automate your processes, to make them more efficient, but more importantly to track them as well with our case management. And this of course gave us a mountain of data, millions of cases, literally millions of cases since then. And we've also started implementing many improvements to just improve our servicing processes, right? So the different sources coming not just from email but also from the web, but also flows to enable more efficient working for our support agents. And that brings us to process mining, because after all these years of continuous improvement, and we're still improving, it of course makes sense to see how are our processes that we are building, how are the systems and are the automations that we are using, how are these actually contributing to our KPIs? Are our customers more satisfied because we are working in the direction, of course, to satisfy them? Are we working more efficiently as our processes are also aiming to do? And that's indeed where which brings us today, right? That's what we wanted to know. So that's it.
Yes, great. Thank you, Rupert. We're gonna also move to a small introduction of both our companies. So I will start with Apolix and then hand it over to Proximus, so you have an idea where we both come from. Yeah, so Apolix, we are a startup based in Holland and Rotterdam. We are a process mining consultancy firm, and we mainly do process mining. What is very special about us is that we have a value-first approach. So if I say value-first approach, it doesn't say anything to you if you don't know process mining that well, but I will explain it in a minute. So there are a couple of vendors on the market that offer this technology. And one of them is Celonis, and it's one of the leaders also in the market. And that's the software that we work with at the moment. And to have an understanding what our collaboration is based upon, we're one of the top vendors from their side. So a lot of implementations go at the end of the day through us. So what we do is we analyze processes with data and we show these insights. And what value first approach means at this point is that we really focus at the end of the day with those insights to do something and make a change into an organization. So what is process mining and how do we make that change in the organization are 2 points that I will touch on later. That's why I will hand it over to Rupert to introduce Proximus first.
Sure, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I guess we're all impatient to get to the core of our webinar, right? Which is what do process mining really do? But just in a nutshell, we're the leading telco operator in Belgium. So feel free to explore the data you see on your screen at your leisure, or you're looking at the recording. But for the purpose of this meeting, basically, that's all there is to say. I'm a big telco operator with a big focus, of course, on customer satisfaction, which is why we're looking at process mining at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Great. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. So process mining, what is it? So we analyze data, but we analyze process data. So any process that you can think of in an organization, when a customer places an order and then that order gets delivered and then it gets paid, that is a whole end-to-end process. And what we do, we go into a company and we take the raw data. So we connect to ERP, CRM systems, whatever it is, take that raw data and create a perfect digital twin of a process with Celonis. So we visualize whatever is happening in your raw data in a visualized process. What you see here at the end of the day is a continuous improvement cycle. So the first step is to measure. So we take the raw data extracted from the raw systems, visualize these processes, but then start to enrich it with KPIs, dimensions, to understand the root cause of problems. So we start by sitting together with customers and try to understand what are certain, or what do they assume are certain problems that they're facing at the moment. And with No, we go deeper into the root cause of these problems. If I take one small example, reassignment. So what does that really mean? That means an agent receives a case and then assigns it to someone else, and that other agent also assigns it to someone else, and it keeps getting reassigned. Sometimes companies have an assumption that there is a lot of reassignment, but they don't know where, what is the impact, and how can they actually tackle it. So by having that data, we can right away see what is it impacting and where exactly is that happening? Is that reassignment rate mainly based in certain departments? Does that have an impact on the overall cycle time of the whole process? And then at the end, there's one important part, and that is the acting part. So after knowing all these information and these insights, you have to act on them. So the important thing is to translate it in a certain value or make a change into the organization in order to solve that problem. Not 100%, but start solving that problem. So for example, in ACT, there's intelligent automation possibilities where you can solve the problem by sending certain notifications into the system or automatically changing something in the ERP system. If there are any questions about what process mining means at this point, please feel free to write it also in the chat, but we will also have a Q&A session at the end. So earlier I said we have a value-based approach at Apolix, and I said I will touch onto that point, and I want to explain that point more deeply now. So once we have the insights from the data, what do we do with it? There are actually 3 pillars that we mainly focus on, and the first one is organizational. So what does that mean is we try with that data identify what are possible investment areas where the organization should invest, and that is fact-based, based on data? Or is it something related to the process? Could we actually redesign this process? And a very good or funny example was at one of our customers before, we saw that it is possible to have a different process, a fast-track process for opportunities in the sales area that are that don't have such a high value. So they don't have to input so much information. So this is already a direction of process redesign. You design your processes based on your business model. Then there's also change management. It's also something very interesting, because what if you realize that maybe some departments are more trained than others, and you need to have any kind of new trainings for your FTEs, and they're not using the ERP systems or using the process as it's supposed to be. The second pillar is execution management. When I say execution management, I mainly mean Celonis. So we can create value immediately in Celonis. So when you see in the data that, for example, there is a need to automate something that gets triggered from the moment the problem is found within the data in Celonis, you can already trigger that automation from Celonis. But there's multiple other things. You can do simulations, you can work with machine learning, try to identify certain trends, and so on. And the third pillar is IT systems. So what is possible in IT systems is mainly understanding what is the user adoption, how are they using certain fields, are certain fields completely irrelevant, are certain fields super important, but they're not being used properly. And by having the clear understanding of that and quantify it in Celonis, it helps to make the step or to change the ERP system in a way, or to start a conversation. Okay, so that was just a pre-agenda information. What is process mining? How do we generate value with it? And now this is our main agenda. So what are we going to do today? We're going to start with the conclusion. So the conclusion of our project together with Proximus. Then go to a live demo. So we will show you in Celonis how did we tackle those problems, and then a bit of vision, and then enough time for Q&A. All right, so in the conclusion, mainly when we talk about customer service, you always associate it to customer satisfaction. Your customer is your product. Your customer is the most important part of your business. You want to keep your customer happy. You want to have customers that build a big brand reputation for you, and you also want them to come back. And what is very important is investing in certain areas to improve customer service and improve customer satisfaction. Keeps on going on, but where to actually invest, that is something sometimes a bit blurry. But having data and being able to go to collect these low-hanging fruits, that is a good step to start. So from our conclusion from our project with Proximus is we had 3 main conclusions, and these are the ones that we're also going to show in the demo in a bit. So number 1, reassignment rate. As I explained it a bit, what is reassignment rate? It is mainly when an agent receives a case to solve, but does not solve it, but sends it to the next agent and to the next agent. And then multiple agents are involved within one case. And this is causing a high resolution time. So at this point, what we started doing is try to understand what is the potential of reducing the cycle time. Are the customers being not happy enough because the case is being solved after a while? So we saw that there's a potential of reducing it by 3 whole days. So it takes 3 more days just because internally that case was not assigned to the right agent, or that agent cannot solve it at the moment, or does not have the right knowledge to solve it. And then we noticed that also the customer effort score is having an impact of 0.52 in the customer effort score. So we will see all of that in the demo also in a bit. But mainly, how did we even start this project? And we started it with the right focus. What does that mean is we always sit together with the customer and we try to make it a very collaborative way of working together. And we try to identify the business objectives that will help you solve the problems that you assume have at the current moment. For customer service, we decided together with Proximus that these 3 business objectives were going to be the ones we're focusing on. As you see, it's a very broad scope. So in the demo, we will only show one. But what did we look at? We looked at customer satisfaction. So how is the customer effort score going? What are the correlation to the process, to the throughput time, to the reassignment rate, and so on. Then we looked at the operational efficiency. So what are certain ping pongs? Is there any internal or external pending? Where are they happening and why are they happening? And then the last part is compliance. Mainly here, we looked at a lot of different areas of compliance, but the most important one was SLA breaches. So if sometimes certain cases are being resolved on time, but it was a fake resolve because they needed to reach their SLAs, but then the next day they would reopen that case, work on it again, and resolve it the next day again. So it was kind of a manipulation of an SLA to look like you finished your task on time, but it wasn't maybe really finished. Okay, let's move to the exciting part. Let's move to the demo. I'm gonna refresh 1 second because I want to make sure I'm still logged in. Okay, perfect. Okay, so what do we see here right now is completely anonymized data. So we did the project with Proximus, but the use cases are the same, but the data is anonymized. What you see right now is we connected to the Salesforce system of Proximus. We had a direct connection to their data, and we uploaded data on a daily basis to see the most recent things. After building the data model, the very first thing that you see is this. So as I said earlier, the digital twin of your process that is happening in ERP, you can see it here right now. So this is a variant explorer. What does a variant explorer mean? It means that it shows you every possible variant that exists in the organization. That means a variant is from start to end, a whole process, how it flows, and every time there's an additional step or a different direction of the process, then there is additional variance. The very first thing we try to look at is the total number of variants. And here we can see there's almost 56,000 variants. What does that mean? That means that the process is not very standardized, that there's a lot of deviations, there's a lot of additional steps, and it does not always flow as it was designed or as it is desired. So the power of process mining mainly is also to understand the throughput time it takes between one step and another. So if I look at the process and explain it real quick, is an agent places a request or has a case that needs to be resolved via email, a portal, whatever it is. Then, since Rupert already said this is a B2B business, first it gets into a queue. So there are certain groups that take care of certain customers. So it gets into a queue automatically, then it gets assigned to an agent, which then works on it, resolves it, and then closes it. So this is the main process, and then what you can do is you can look at every single variant of those 56 almost thousand variants. So when I keep clicking, what I can see is I can see additional steps adding. So I see after the user or the agent has been set, there's an additional step of changing the initial request. Then what I can do, I can keep clicking and I already see, okay, this is my variant number 3, and I can dynamically see what is happening. So multiple times, maybe, so it was set to a queue automatically, but then this automatic queue was overruled and was set to another queue. So what does that mean? It means that that department which was supposed to take care of that customer group was maybe not the right one. So it gets set to another queue manually, then to the agent, and then it starts getting worked on. So if I want to look at all the variants, what I can do is I just select all the variants that exist. And then I get the picture of all processes that exist in a company. What you have to understand is this is not something that you can create from brown paper sessions. This is not something that you can create via documenting your processes. This is detailed, every single process that exists. And from here, you obviously cannot start analyzing because this picture is very messy. So Rupert, maybe to you now, what did you feel or how did you feel when we first showed you your process and when we first showed you the amount of variations that exist in the process?
Well, it's indeed surprising. It's surprising to see these number of deviations, well, and variations actually, because you indeed start with, like you say, the happy flow that you expect your cases to go. You expect some differences, but of course, like you say, you're never going to be able to come down and find really, how and where are we not respecting these processes, and of course not how often. That's why I like this view that you indeed see, okay, you have a number one which covers X percentage, and you do have some deviations. Some are more exceptional than others. But I think it is important to make one important remark here. That is, as Amina said earlier, we started with a very broad scope. We wanted to see we said, okay, we want to see what the tool is ready for. It was just it was a proof of concept. It's not a real complete implementation. We said we don't know anything about Celonis. Let us know what you can do. Connect to our Salesforce, look at all our processes, and we have many. We did not say look at, for example, just the complaint process or just the ordering process or just cases which are being created via the web. We said just look at everything and show us, let us know what you see. We explained briefly, well, we explained, of course, our way of working. But what you see here, you see many variants, but to be clear, not all variants are bad, right? Imagine that I am a support agent and I start working on a case. One of the things I need to do is give feedback to my customer. Yes, dear customer, I started working on it. Another thing I need to do is enrich the case to say, okay, this is a case about an invoice. Something else I need to do is maybe add some comments or assign the case to somebody else, right? Now, the sequence in which I do this, maybe I would first send feedback to the customer, or maybe I would first enrich it, or maybe I would first, make a little note for myself. It doesn't really matter. Point of efficiency, it doesn't really matter. But of course, Celonis cannot notice. It just sees it as different ways of working and says, woof, look at how many variants you have. Yeah. So not all variants are by definition bad. Not all deviations mean that it's not a happy path. And obviously, if that's something that you want to see, and have more clarity on that, well, you need to, of course, focus more on it and say, okay, these type of variants, we can whitelist them. You can ignore them for now. We know as a business that these are not that relevant for us, and we want to keep that visual less messy. We want to see what really is a problem, right? So that is just something I wanted to specify, just to make things a bit clearer.
Yeah, it's a very important point and very good point. So it starts all with data, but then what is very important is the collaboration with the experts of the process and then working closely together and making sense out of the data, taking those exceptions out and looking at the real bottlenecks. So it's an important point because that's also something that we always want to keep in mind. It's collaboratively with the process experts that know the best their process, and it's just not just data.
Yeah.
But let's move to the most exciting part. I think everyone is still super excited about this part. I'm gonna also refresh real quick. Okay, so now we're going to a bit more operational dashboard, and I'm gonna be clicking a bit around. Please feel free to ask questions, or if you don't understand something, let me know. So now we're looking at reassignment rate. So the main assumption was like, if there are one or two agents involved within one case and they just help each other, or it wasn't assigned correctly at the beginning, then that does not have a big impact nor on the cycle time nor on the customer effort score. But what if we have a lot of agents, and as you can see, there is 3 and up to 16 agents that could be involved. in a process, and you start wondering, why are there so many agents involved? So the first thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to select 0, 1, and 2 agents. So I have 0, 1, or 2 agents involved. They got a case, they resolved the case and gave it back to the customer. And I click on yes, and I start understanding my KPIs here. So the average handling time of this case is 2 days. So you receive it, a customer has a question or a claim or anything, after 2 days it's resolved. And we connected it to the customer effort score. And we see that it's 3.85. So everything is going happily ever good. And then what I want to see is I want to benchmark it and compare it to, what if I have 3 or more agents involved? What happens then? What I see here right away is, instead of 2 days, I have 7 days. So it takes them 7 days to resolve something, which maybe should have taken 2 days if the right person was assigned early enough. And the other thing what we can notice right away is that the customer effort score has dropped from 3.85 to 3.33. So cycle time is increasing, customer effort score is decreasing, customer is not that happy that it's taking so long to resolve something. But how can we drill down deeper into this? So drilling down is you take multiple dimensions, and we started with trying to understand what kind of category of case or ticket or request did that customer have. And the very first one is others. So as I said, anonymized data, so you will not see what exactly it is, but others mainly means to me that there was no category at the beginning. So we couldn't even categorize that case, so it couldn't be assigned to the right person. So what I could do now is I can select only these other ones, and I will try to understand more and more dimensions. What could that possibly mean? And here I can see the origin. So where are these cases actually coming from? And I see the very first one is Outlook. So here I right away take the assumption that maybe the fact that emailing is not structured data, it's not possible to categorize it, so it's not possible to solve it fast. So right away you have like a whole chain of insights and a strong use case that maybe Outlook should be an investment area, and that cases do not come via Outlook anymore, but try to invest more, that customers put their ticket in via some portal or via something else. So with my little demo of reassignment and a bit of fake data, Rupert, what were your insights when we had this whole reassignment rates and customer effort score and customer satisfaction? How did you feel about these insights?
I especially, of course, liked the way that that all this data is combined. As you showed briefly, you can take it from any direction, right? You can say, let me just start at the number of reassignments, but what you could also do is let me just look at, which cases are scoring the worst, right? Where are our customers really giving us poor scores? And from that, you can, just turn the discussion around. Just look at what products, what channels, which teams, what is the origin, right? So there you can really start clicking, and it's quite intuitive and very addictive, honestly, because what you typically have in reports is that you start out with an idea. Okay, I want to report on, let's say you say, I want to look at, just give me I don't know, show me all cases with a long handling time. Then you have a report on cases with a long handling time, right?
Yeah.
But then you'll ask yourself the question, yeah, but okay, this gives me something, but I want to know, as of when is this actually impacting my customer satisfaction? Oh, I need to ask another report. And then you get your second report, and you say, well, now I want to know, but is it different, depending on product, or is it different depending on origin, or is it the reassignment rate, or so there's really that's the nice thing here. You can really combine all these dimensions and get a very cool view on this. And of course, it also gives you the possibility to avoid taking the wrong conclusions, right? Because of course, this is the story saying, okay, look at these reassignments, and that is causing your long handling time. No, it's not as simple as that, obviously. Sometimes you simply have cases which are, by their nature, more complicated. If you need to do a complete analysis of a customer's invoice, you're not going to do it with one person, right? You can maybe reassign it to somebody else. It can also be that I'm on holiday and my backup needs to take up that action as well. So now we already have 3 people working on it, or it takes a bit longer for a correction. So in some scenarios, the number of people working on it is by design and is not impacting the customer satisfaction negatively. So you really have to look at all this data, and that is what this enables you to do. It enables you to say, okay, I have an assumption, and that's also one of the things that we wanted to do with Celonis. We have an assumption that factors A, B, and C are impacting our handling time. Let's zoom in on that, right? So then you can challenge your own assumptions and see, well, is this actually the reason, right? We can assume that all cases that customers are creating via the web, by definition, mean that the customer has gives a good customer effort score because it's much easier for him to do so. Is that the case, or is it not the case, right? So then you start zooming in on all web cases, and you see that not all of them are happy. Well, then why not? And so I think the point here, just like my previous remark, this enables you to do a lot of things. But with the scope that we have taken, which is really very broad, it does not at this moment tell me, okay, this is my silver bullet. No, if you want to do that, you really need to focus more, and you do need to work with the tools which are being provided to you. The point is that these tools are very powerful and enable you to go very far and keeping enriching them, and then say, okay, now if I tweak or adapt something, do I see it changing here, right? With the live connection of Celonis to Salesforce, you'll be able to see that, right? If you'll just compare cases from, let's say, last month with this month. So yeah, that's what I like. But like I said, it takes some work, right? It's not good. It's just data. It can be good data, it can be bad data, and the interpretation of data, that requires, of course, an expert.
Yeah, definitely. So if I summarize it, also is we can generate these facts with process mining, touch the surface, and then go deeper every time. But also there's a limit at some point to what we can do with that data. And the most important thing is interpreting the data that we have and working together to take out all kind of exceptions and really find the bottlenecks that we want to see. But starting somewhere and having these facts laid out, so these numbers, how long does it actually take, how many agents do we have here and there, what is the customer effort score, that visibility and transparency at the beginning is super important. But going further, those are the more tougher parts of the project, but also the more interesting ones.
Yeah, and I mean, the power is really in the data. Like I said, to confirm or contradict your assumptions. For example, I think a very nice example is when we want, if you look at what is important for a customer, right? He's going to say, and we see this in the feedback on our service, I want things to be obviously first time right. I don't want to have to contact you multiple times for something. I want to be kept aware, right? I want communication on the progress of my case. And of course, I don't want this to take too long. Now, something like first time right, how do you know if a request was treated correctly the first time right? You can, of course, ask the customer, which is what we do. We say, was your question resolved the first time right, or did you have to contact us again, right? And the customer will say, well, it was not done correctly the first time. Another way of looking at it is also for our teams who work on the cases, they also say, well, when I get a case from my colleague and I need to work on it, it also needs to be first time right, because else I cannot, do my work correctly. Now, these two are both, perceptions and judgments given by either an internal user or by a customer, which is, it's good. Perception is of course important, but what does the data say? I mean, how many emails do you see going back and forth between the customer and the agent, right? Because not all customers answer a survey, but if you can see that for a case which normally is supposed to have like a communication rate of 2 or 3 emails, you see there are 30. Yeah, well, you don't need the customer to tell you that it was not first time right. You can take that assumption right away and take it from there. If you see that on an internal case, a user did not say that this request was first time right, but you do see that there are like 10 or 15 or 17 comments going back and forth on the same day, you can also know that something is going on, right? This is something on a volume of millions of cases that you will never be able to take out if you don't have a powerful tool which will enable you to slice and dice this information and look at it and confirm, like I said, confirm your assumptions, or take it from any direction you want. Bad customer effort score, longer handling times, etc. So that is the main message I think here to remember.
Yeah, okay. All right. I'm going to go back to the presentation just to show the key takeaways from what we have just seen and what is the vision, and then we can move on to the Q&A. So the key takeaways at the end of the day, yes, Rupert says there is a lot of exceptions. There is a lot of working together with the process experts, but mainly what we've seen right now is how can we understand process efficiency? How do we figure out how compliant our process is? As we saw the Variant Explorer, we saw multiple ways how a process is flowing, and we are able to look at every way a process is flowing, and we can detect the compliant and non-compliant ones. And second of all, investment areas. We can detect the low-hanging fruit with data. We can understand where should be our next move to invest somewhere, and understand how is the reassignment rate being good, bad, or how can we interpret it and how can we improve it. So the vision, a bit how we usually think of it, is first of all starting with one process, one system, and at this moment we did the customer service or case management. We connected to Salesforce, a POV of 4 to 6 months in order to show some business value, and then we move on to multiple systems, multiple processes or multiple systems. So we looked at another process, the opportunity management and case management, and then it keeps on growing until you look at multiple processes and multiple systems in order to be able to understand what is happening in the whole organization. So mainly we call it start quickly, scale infinitely. So you scale after you analyze your first process, moving to the remaining processes in your organization. All right, that was it. We are here now for questions. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or type it in. Yeah. Or if we explained everything so well, then there will be no questions.
I've worked together on it with Rupert to analyze some stuff, and it's proven very useful. This process mining in the tool.
Great, I love to hear that.
Thanks, Koen. Yeah, I think, and I explained to Amina as well, because up to now where we are, because you explained a bit at the end the vision and what could be potential next steps. So at the moment, indeed, we are still very much connected to Salesforce, and we're looking at this data. I'm using it on a regular basis, almost daily. But like I mentioned several times before, if you really want to get a lot out of this, you have to invest the time in it as well. It's so interesting, but you need to have people who say, okay, now where do we want to take this? I was mentioning the example earlier about a customer complaint, and this first time right, and how you can interpret this, right? And you could set up, let's say, alarming or some kind of monitoring and saying, okay, I see customers not receiving the right communication. I see a high level of communication on back and forth between customer and support agent for cases of type XYZ, arriving in teams ABC. And these kinds of analyses can prove very helpful, because they will point you to where you need to take action. Yeah. But well, you need people to do this, right? And we are at the moment in a reorganization where we are fortunately also creating dedicated data specialists and analytics teams who will have, well, of course, a lot of data to analyze, right? My journey, which is the admin assistance journey, is just one of the many journeys. But it gives you an idea. If you have people dedicated to analyzing and looking into this data, that is, of course, when you will really start seeing the value. I like it already now, because often I need the data. I need to do quick checks, and it just gives this to me very, very efficiently, and it allows me to avoid misinterpretations of data. But the real big value will, of course, come if you start adding the dedicated resources on it, or coming back to Amina and saying, Amina, this was very nice, but now I want to focus more on let's say, product X, or I want to look specifically at our complaint handling process, which has many, automations and specific flows that we implement in order to make sure that when we are treating a customer complaint, which is a very important moment of truth, that we are doing this correctly, that it's going fast enough, that we are, contacting our customer back and seeing that he is indeed satisfied in the survey that we sent afterwards regarding how his complaint was resolved. So instead of taking the whole broad scope of all case management, really zooming in, whitelisting certain things, zooming in on certain processes, and then of course, you get to the real value, because then you will be focusing and picking out things that you want to work on, which is at the moment still we're in a zoom out. Although with this we see very detailed data from a process level, we really need to invest more time, and that would make it
you're very right. No,
So,
you're right. That's a big learning, to really try to focus on one business objective, try to zoom in. And as I said also at the beginning, is a continuous improvement. So it's important that to know that it's never done. So you keep on zooming in deeper and deeper and still find those exceptions, takes them out. So it's a continuous thing. It just doesn't stop with the first view that you have. And it's important to know that the more you deep dive into your data, the more you analyze it, the more you're going to find things. And also the close collaboration with the process experts in order to make more sense of what you're seeing.
Yeah, what it also does is it's since you see and that is also a nice finding, and since you see the power that you have of data, it drives you as an organization to also be a bit more careful, right? We have the case categorization, so a user when he creates a case, he has to say, is it fixed? What's the value, right? What's the domain? What is the product? What did I do for this customer?
Yeah.
Now you can do this up to a certain detail level without without much trouble with the user categorizing it correctly. But if you go overboard and if you start adding so many detail levels that the users kind of get lost in what to do, and maybe you're doing this because you want to have a very granular level on reporting, you're getting the opposite effect, right? You're getting people creating bad data, and you see how much that hurts you when you really dive into that data and want to use it to improve your processes. If you have people categorizing something very generically, and you see bad customer satisfaction scores, then you really hit your head and say, listen, this is really a shame that we don't have this guide. So it drives you to further improve your data, because you know what more you can get out of it. So I think that already is a win in itself as well.
Rupert, there's a question for you in the chat. So
Sure.
Do you see also value in process mining for other departments in Proximus?
I do. For me, at the moment, we focused very much on customer service, and as I explained, that's really my area of expertise. But I know that there are different departments within Proximus also already using process mining tools. So that in itself already proves that there is value in it, right? Everywhere where you have data, and where you have logic, where you have people collaborating, where you have things that go wrong, and which is like basically everywhere. If you have a process, you need to, so yes, definitely. If you have the data, then process mining can definitely help you connect the dots, right?
Good answer. I would have answered the same. So there's Bart asking if we can do process mining also on ServiceNow. Yes, so there's sometimes standard connectors from Celonis to certain ERP or CRM systems. ServiceNow, there is a standard connector, but also if there's no standard connector, it's possible to connect to any system that has data via multiple different ways and do process mining on it. So it also then depends what do you really want to analyze, what do you want to achieve with it, and that will be then a discussion to see how can process mining help you achieve those results.
Yeah, and that's what makes it actually interesting, because Service Cloud, of course, with case management is a very nice object to run this on, because it's a very a case has so much data that is interesting. But as you saw, we have the customer effort score in there as well, which is not coming from Salesforce. We have connected this to, well, we've not connected, we've done actually an export from Qualtrics, but with a case ID as an identifier to link the two. And well, you can take it from there, right? Imagine that if we wanted to go further and say we also want to connect with our provisioning systems downstream, a case ends when the user, just does his administration and logging, basically the CRM aspect. But that's not where it ends, right? For the customer, you have lots of other things which will happen. You have the provisioning in the systems. You have maybe people visiting the customer to do an installation on site. You can imagine that all those things also will impact your customer satisfaction, even though they're not visible in your case data, right? So that could be also an idea to connect to those other systems and see, what is really going on.
Yeah. Anyone else has a question?
Rupert, I would suggest that you share the recording of this session with Jan Willems for the technical assistance journey, which is handled in ServiceNow.
I definitely will
send the recording out.
Yeah, and I'll give him a dedicated one, because I don't know when you joined, Bart, but what you saw, of course, in here is that you see that we have anonymized all the data. So it's like a woodworking factory. We don't deal in wood, we deal in telco. But of course, we wanted to keep these things anonymous, but it will be it'll speak very much to his imagination if I really start showing him the real data with real Proximus data. I can tell a very good story to him. So I'll definitely reach out to him, Bart. Thanks for the suggestion.
Yeah, thanks.
Amina, you got a question.
Okay, what was the most challenging part in this project? Well, well, we did a small mistake with this project, is that we had too big of a scope. We wanted to do everything, solve everything. And even though we broke it down into 3 business objectives, which seems little, it was way too much. So we went too broad on each of these business objectives. And I think what would have been the right way to do is to focus on one business objective, really try to generate value there, and then move on to the second one. So I think that was the challenging part, because also at the end we noticed that maybe this was not valuable enough. It was valuable, but maybe not enough, because we should have just dived deeper into one thing and solved one problem that could have been turned into an action plan for Proximus. And the second thing is also the continuous improvement. I think now we did a small stop because, as Rupert said, they have organizational changes. The stop is usually something that is also not so recommended, because then you don't have the continuous part where you still work on the data, improve it, enhance it, build more things. I think that was also something that wasn't so great.
Yeah, and I think it's actually 2 things. We didn't know anything about Celonis and process mining, so we really our first thing was we want to know what it can do, and I think in that effect it succeeded, right? It showed us well, partly because it can do, of course, much more than what we're seeing now, and like Amina said, we're not getting that value immediately because we need to focus more. But still, it's giving you a huge view on a lot of information about your case. So that is already as on its own the main objective was, and we only took 4 to 6 weeks. We said, show us what the tool can do, and that it has done, right?
It showed the potential on a broad scope.
Exactly. And the
now,
next
if you want the added value, indeed, we need to narrow the scope and dig deeper. But at least we know where the potential is. And therefore, where we need to dig deeper. That's also important. It's like a broad scan, and then you know, okay, this is where you need to start digging.
Yeah,
very good point. Yeah.
Imagine, I mean, if we'd known all this, of course, before, and if we knew what the capabilities would have been, we would have said, okay, we know what you can do. Let's just focus in directly on process X, right?
Yeah.
And gone really into detail. But I could not have posed, I myself, with 0 knowledge, I could never have come up with good requirements and explaining, because I didn't know what was possible. So
yeah.
I was attending a Qualtrics event yesterday in Amsterdam, and the presenter from Bain used the picture of a guy with a metal detector and a shovel. And the metal detector shows you where you need to start digging, and that's what you've done now. You've used the metal detector, and now it's up to us to start digging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
All right, only 5 minutes left to the meeting. I want to say thank you before everyone wants to move to the next meeting. Thank you so much for attending the session, and I really, really hope we shed some light on process mining and how to use it for customer service. If you do still have questions, feel free to email me, Rupert, or anyone that can help you. Otherwise, yeah, have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for your attention. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.